What's going on, beautiful J4 community? Welcome to another Sunday edition of Dad's Talk. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Truly appreciate you guys coming by. I hope your Sunday is off to a great start, that you got your house right where you want it to be, that you played your music and had the sounds that are familiar to you that you like to groove to. I hope your coffee was just the right temperature and the right amount of bitterness if you're a coffee drinker. Here at J4 Conversations, we stay within the theme of fathers. We started off as two fathers and two sons chopping it up about life, but we've grown, we've evolved, we've added some new elements to include fathers talking to future fathers, fathers talking with fathers, and even fathers sort of reflecting upon the lessons, good and or bad, that they learned from their fathers. You know, in the current landscape, so much going on in the society, so much going on in the world. It's important that men get together, particularly in the father space, and have some, sort of fun, open, candid conversations about what it means to sort of operate and function in the space of father. So if you guys are joining us in Facebook Live, welcome. If you're joining us on YouTube, appreciate you. Or if you're in LinkedIn land, again, welcome. Today we're going to be kind of giving our spin on the what was it called, the Oscars recently, where two grown men kind of had an encounter, and that encounter has sort of rippled out throughout the internet waves, has had probably been the subject matter of many table conversations. And we have two souls, regardless of what your thoughts and opinions are, who are probably in deep, reflective, shock state. And I'm sure at this time, they would love to have the counsel of their father. Unfortunately, neither Will Smith's father is alive. He passed away in 2016. Will would have been the age of 47. And then Chris Rock's father died much earlier in his life in 1988 at the age of 23. And so I hope that those brothers have someone that's in their ear of an elder statesman stature that can sort of help guide them through this ultimately tumultuous stage in their life. I'm sure that they are rocked, no pun intended. So today I have two guests joining me, but before I introduce them, I want to send a shout out to a Facebook community. If you guys are looking for a community of fathers who share pride moments, seek advice, counsel, share scenarios, and seek feedback, then head on over to Facebook and check out Black Fathers or Proud Black Fathers. Either one of those communities are very robust, very large, and great communities for fathers to have opportunities to learn and to hear from others. If you're just joining us, love to know where you're from, what platform you're watching us on, or just send a general shout out so we can recognize you and have you be a part of the community. If at any time during this session, if you all have questions that you all would like to pose to any of the panelists, we welcome you. All right. So without further ado or delay, I want to introduce a previous guest on Father to Father Conversation, Mr. Darren Chapman. I call him D Chap. D, welcome to the platform. How you doing, brother?
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me again. It's appreciating being here once more.
Darren is a pilot. He flies around the world, and so anytime we can get his presence here, it always works in our favor. D Chap, man, introduce yourself, man. Tell the beautiful people where you're from, what's your status as a father, kids, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, currently I'm in California, originally from the East Coast, but grew up here in California. I've got 4 kids, 22, 18, 15, and 3. So wide spectrum there, the kids. And I'm a pilot, so I'm traveling quite a bit around the world. So it makes it challenging with the children's situation and the kids' situation. But it's going well. Went to ASU with my boy AJ, and we're holding it strong.
D-Chap, good to see you, man. D-Chap did it. He had father early and father a little late, so he's working it out. So I see Ziz Abdul Rauf, ACC, welcome. Detroit in the house. Peace be with you as well, brother. Representing LinkedIn. Glad to see you. Elgin, what's happening? I'm gonna get to you, brother.
All right.
That beard game's a little strong, man. That beard game's a little strong.
Man, don't start.
B, don't feel intimidated by all that black and gray over there, B. I know you got yourself.
I got a little bit.
B, man, introduce yourself to the beautiful community. You kind of, where you're from, and tell me your kids and age, that kind of stuff.
All right, welcome. Thanks, AJ. I appreciate it. Beautiful Black people in the AJ's community. I want to say thank y'all for allowing me to share this space. I'm Brian K. Smith, born and raised on the south side of Chicago, currently living in Clemson, South Carolina. I am the father of 4, the grandfather of 6, and I have been doing this parenting thing way longer than I probably should have, but pretty
No
successful
doubt, brother.
so far.
Hey, representing Chicago, the shy grandfather status as well.
Yes.
Welcome, beautiful folks who just signing in. Let us know who you are, where you're from, and feel free to ask any questions at any particular point. Big E, how you been, man?
All right, brother. How you been?
Good, man. Are you in the Bahamas or you in Arizona?
I'm in Arizona right now.
I can't keep up with you, man. When I text you to come hang out, and all of a sudden you're in the Bahamas.
Yeah, man. We'll get together. So I can give you the download. What's going on?
Man, life is good. We chilling on a Sunday. Dad talking to dads, man. Can't beat that in any kind of way.
Yes,
Elgin, man, same thing, brother. Share where you're from and what's your status as a father.
All right. So, brothers, I'm currently in Phoenix, Arizona, Laveen, Arizona, to be specific. I'm originally from San Diego, California. I have 5 children, 5 sons. Been married 27 years. The ages range from 24 to 21, 18, 15 to 10.
Wow. 20 what's the oldest?
24.
24 to 10, man. You got a full house. All boys, right?
All boys, man.
Got a Morehouse man over there too, B.
Got actually 2 of them.
2 of them. Okay. All right. Well, in return, let me share as well for those of y'all listening in who have not had the pleasure to meet yet. I'm a father of 6. I got the range from 32 to 17 years old. My last one is in high school, and I'm this is part of my empty nest project, but also obviously I've spent a lot of time in the mental space of fatherhood, which kind of sort of motivated me to kind of open up the conversation to talk with men of all ages who are aspiring fathers, current fathers, veteran fathers. Just to kind of get it out there more often. A lot of times we don't speak candidly around the theme of fatherhood, revealing our shining moments, our embarrassing moments, our successes, our struggles. And so this platform is just a way to kind of chop it up about this beautiful thing called parenting. So without further ado, y'all brothers ready?
Ready?
Yes, sir.
Ready?
All right.
Do it.
In case you all been under a rock, there was a slap that occurred I don't know when it was, last week sometime, and the internet is just on fire. And folks have a lot of opinion around the act, what caused the act, what motivated the act, what was Chris's complicity, if anything, what was Will thinking, if anything. But I want to talk from a father's perspective. As I mentioned a little earlier, neither one of them have their father. Chris Rock's father died in 1988. He was present in his life, but he died when Chris was about 23 years old, so he would have had some influence on his life. Will Smith's father died in 2016. Will would have been 47 years old. They kind of had a tumultuous relationship. He defined his father as abusive towards his mother, and that was something that always lingered in his spirit for not being able to protect her. But nonetheless, these brothers need some elder wisdom counsel. Now, even though they're of age, Will is 53, Chris Rock is 57, older than myself, but it is possible that their father could have been alive. I'm 54, my dad is alive, kicking in strong. We're about to take us a dad trip to New Orleans. So it is possible that their father could have been alive to counsel them. So in that spirit, beautiful men, if you were Chris Rock's father, what guidance would you give him? B, I see you smiling, so I'm gonna go to you.
Man, that's a real tough question, AJ. I think if I were Chris Rock's father, I would probably just say, congratulations, son. I'm proud of how you handled that. That's the fatherly wisdom piece of me that would want to say that. There's a street side of me that would want to say, man, why ain't you slapped him back though? So
why didn't you bust him in his head?
that. Yeah, so but I think I would hope if I was his father, I would have the wisdom to say, well done, son, and I'm glad you handled it the way you did. You did us proud.
All right, so that's the initial response. We'll go a little bit further. I'm hearing a little echo in someone, so y'all mute if you're not chopping. All right, who would like to go next? Elgin, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'll begin by saying that if I was Chris Rock's father, I think I would have said to him that you know, my father had an old saying that you pay the cost to be the sauce or the hot sauce, right? You pay the cost to be the boss of the hot sauce. That's what he used to say. And in other words, if you want to step out and express yourself, there are consequences to actions, good, bad, or indifferent. And so I would tell him that from that point going forward, maybe you should use better discretion.
For the
maybe
joke?
You should also consider, you should acknowledge culture. If I was Will Smith's father, I would apologize to him. I would probably validate him first. Because if I raised Will the way I raised my own sons, I probably would have raised him to protect and honor those who love him unconditionally to the best of his abilities within reason.
So let me pause right there. So if you're a Chris Rock's father, you would have told him to be mindful of his jokes?
I would have told him to be mindful of his jokes in the sense that there could be consequences to those, man. Because we know, comedians aren't, they don't have a license, right? So we don't know what their boundaries are, man. Comedians often hide under I hate to say hide, but they operate under the umbrella that anything goes. And what is offensive to some people might not be to others, and what's not offensive to others is offensive to some. And I think that we should always be mindful of that. Whether we're joking or not, anything that comes out of our mouth, we are held accountable to. My father used to always also say this: even the messenger is accountable to his words. So I think we should keep that in consideration. I would say keep that in consideration.
All right, well, that's interesting. By the way, Elgin is a thinker. He is a provocative thinker. He challenges at times, as we're seeing today. So let me just, if y'all have questions, feel free. But do we believe, to go a little bit off subject, that comedians aren't entitled to free speech, and that they are the instrument of challenge, of laughter, of controversial content?
Yes, they are absolutely entitled to free speech, like everybody is. But you also have to be responsible for your speech that you're entitled to. And you also have to recognize that there are consequences to speech. There are good consequences, there are bad consequences, there are indifferent consequences, but consequences nonetheless. And I think that when we're looking, and not to, I'm not going to get on a soapbox about it. I just want to say this part. I think that in reflection, we're hearing people say, hey, listen, man, he was comparing her to someone, to Demi Moore, who was sexy, and she was bald at the time. But at the time, that's not where the birthplace of the joke came from. Right. Okay. I think in hindsight, it's good to look at that, and that helps us heal our own thinking, it helps us come to our own conclusions. But that's not where the joke came from. And At the end of the day, he was dealing with a man sitting next to his wife who would have had consequences for himself had he not said anything, did anything, reacted, in any way by his wife. So I think that, yes, of course, they're entitled to free speech, man.
Mm-hmm.
But we have got to remember that we've got to be held accountable to our speech. We have to be responsible within the framework of that entitlement.
All right, beautiful. Elders is taking I'll say from my observation of the internet dialogue, a less than popular opinion, and he stands on his own 2 feet. I know that. Let me know your thoughts here. Did Chris kind of tee up something and rightfully got held accountable for it? Let me know your thoughts in the chat there. We'll come back to that because you talked about a cultural element, right? Clearly, it wasn't a reference to attraction and sexiness that was associated perhaps with Demi Moore. But what was it, right? Did he know she had the condition? Was it just acknowledging a bald-headedness? I don't know. We'll loop back to that. D-Chap, give me your thoughts on Chris. But before we do that, physical violence is not the answer. Will could have used his words, not his hand. Okay? Dr. Went, one of our main ambassadors. D-Chap, where are you at on the subject where Chris Rock's fathers, what kind of guidance could he have given him?
Yeah, being a father over the years, the first thing I'd want to do to Chris is to embrace him. Being his father, he would need to be embraced because you've got the media and the community out there. He's reading lots of things, seeing a lot of things, and as a father, I want to be the first person to give him a hug and say, "How are you feeling?" So that would be the first thing I would ask him. How are you feeling? That would lead me into, where is my son? What is he thinking about? Where is he at? And that would allow me to start a conversation with him and where I need to go. I don't want to start off preaching to someone when that's really not what he needs right now. Of course, I'd praise him for his character on stage after just being slapped. I think he carried himself well, so I would let him know that. But deep inside, I want to know as a father, hey, it's your dad. You can talk to me. You don't have to hide anything. Tell me how you're feeling. So.
Yeah, no doubt. B, you want to get in on that? So any reflective counter thoughts there? Or?
Yeah, man. Of course, I'm all over the place. Brother Elvin said that there's consequences for your words. Chris Rock was at work. He's a comedian. That's his job. He's supposed to be provocative. I don't think that Will would appreciate it if somebody came to his job and slapped him. And I get it if you want to defend your woman, but we all know there are so many other instances. If Will wanted to go on a slapping spree, I can name this entanglement guy that he probably could have slapped instead of slapping Chris Rock. This is a consequence of Chris Rock. of Will feeling a certain way over the last year.
E, what are your thoughts? Do you think it was that there was some residual energy that manifested itself in that moment, or do you think it was straight up watch what you say, or there's consequences?
Yeah, there was probably all of that, man.
Right,
There's no doubt about that. But I will say this. One, I don't think Chris Rock was at work. Chris Rock wasn't hosting. Chris Rock was asked to, I think he was reading the nomination.
Right,
so
he was.
He wasn't actually hosting the Oscars that night. So he was maybe in character, but I don't know if he was working. But that's a good point that the brother was making. He is a comedian, so he should be allowed some leverage, if you will, some room to work. Okay. Again, though, there's two sides to that. There's two sides to that. When you do bad work, there's a consequence to bad work. It's not always being slapped, of course, because in professional settings, that's not what we look for.
Right.
Hollywood is different. Hollywood is a space that 95% of us do not operate in, right? it's a different world, man. It's definitely different from the small space that I live in.
Yeah.
And I don't know that world very well, but back to your original question, Zoe, I think that yes, there was some residual effects, man. Listen, this is a guy who saw his mother punched on the side of her head
Right.
when he was a child, and it's haunted him since because he felt like he froze in the moment and didn't protect his mother. We have to understand the space that Will Smith works in as well. And that's armchairing or Monday morning quarterbacking this whole thing as well. But I think it's important to understand the context. He released a book last fall,
right?
And a lot of that, it's a memoir. A lot of that, he admitted, he talked about in there, man, and it just seemed to me that while Chris was being funny and he made people laugh, it was probably the worst timing because of everything that was going on. And if I can just say one last thing, we have to be careful about conflating the issues. Okay, Chris Rock didn't joke about his wife's entanglement.
Right.
He joked about something else. He joked about her hair. So we can't be so presumptuous to jump in on Will and say, well, he should have went after the man that she had an affair with. He dealt with what happened, and that was Chris Rock saying something he felt was offensive, and he came to his wife's honor.
Yeah, no doubt the conflation. In fact, I think there was a moment after the slap where he was trying to recover himself. And by the way, I think he had a Sidney Poitier moment in reverse, right? Sidney Poitier is famous for smacking a white man on
right
in the 50s, 60s, whenever it was. But in response to being smacked, I think he displayed a Sidney Poitier moment. But then there was this moment where I could, right? He said I could, which meant he had the microphone and the viewership, and he could have went anywhere, right?
Yeah.
I could have seen him then going into the entanglement and all the other stuff he probably knows about. Someone is crackling, y'all. Someone's crackling. It might be me. There was he could have went anywhere with that and got real offensive with it. I just didn't feel the offense at the heightened level that required that level of response. Now, I imagine there's any line in any environment that a human being could go at another person publicly and they just have no choice but to just stand up for some kind of manhood, dignity, or protection of their spouse. I just don't know if the G.I. Jane joke led to that particular level of a response, nor do I think a comedian, a host, a speaker has to account for all the thousands of people in front of them and what they might be dealing with, right? You just got to kind of do your thing with a generality of assumption. And if someone is dealing with pain and suffering and hurt that might get triggered by what you're saying, I don't know if the comedian is responsible for that level of accounting. So I think I would advise my son Chris Rock in this instance that I would give him high praise and high assurance that he did the right thing. We could have even walked it down the road that had he hit back, what would have happened? How much, how would that have affected his career? I honestly believe he's coming out on the better end of this in terms of, although this will be a public, in perpetuity visual representation of him. But I think Chris comes out better in this, and I would praise him for that. And I would compliment his poise in an immediate moment. I can't fathom if I were smacked how I would then respond, because all your fight flight energy gets to going and you're ready to, right? But something, and maybe that's just his seasoned professionalism, to just poise himself in that moment and save not only hopefully a reconciliation between he and Will, not only his own personal dignity in the midst of embarrassment, but also culturally what this means for Black people in terms of our own public image. I think you saw a certain impulsivity, violence on the part of Will, but then you saw in the same cultural community a poise and a calmness that automatically balances it out and doesn't have the negative cultural cachet ripple that we might be dealing with right now. So I would commend my son. I would be with him. I would touch all those comfort points that he needs, and to let him know that Pop got his back, that he made the right decision. And then I would call an entire family together to say, hey, how are we going to represent the Rock name? Because I hear they got like 7 brothers out there all ready to go mayhem on the people. But yeah, it's about preserving the Rock name, the legacy of the name. So my thoughts on that. Any other input there? Let's see what the folks are talking about. Z says, Elgin's point is on target and proves as to why we all need to work on our mental fitness. Smith overstepped and Rock's comedy may have been a bit lazy. What do y'all think about that?
I think Chris Rock, as he said, he had no clue of her condition, of her physical condition and loss of hair. Now, I don't know if I don't think Chris Rock would have said that joke if he was aware of it. But then again, you can't be aware of every person's actions or physical problems in the audience to do your show. So, I still think Chris Rock did a really good job. I think unfortunately the joke was distasteful because of her condition, but
right.
As part of his comedy and part of his show, I think it was okay.
Let's take a quick poll for those of y'all listening in some kind of space. Do you all think Chris Rock knew she had a condition, or was it just an inference to her bald-headedness hairstyle? What do y'all think? B, what do you think?
Does it matter? And here's where I'm going with it. Whether he knew about her condition or not, when he told the joke, Will thought it was funny until he looked at his wife. So the majority of people who were sitting there watching that, even though we might have thought it was a bad joke, we still, those of us old enough to know G.I. Jane, thought it was funny. It was amusing, which is what Chris Rock was supposed to be doing. He's filling in the time. He's a comedian. That's why they bring him on to even hand out awards, because they know that he's going to do something or say something that is comedic. So, I think context is really important. Will wasn't threatened. His life was. If you know your wife and all the dirt that a comedian could pull up, if that was the thing that he pulled up was the fact that she was bald-headed, I would be sitting there wiping my brow like, woo, I'm glad he didn't mention the entanglement. I'm glad he didn't say a Tupac joke. I'm glad there's a list of Jada Pinkett stuff. If Chris Rock was trying to be malicious, that would have hit way harder than the G.I. Jane joke. So that's why I'm like, man, this was an overreaction, out of context. With Will, and I go all the way back to from when Will first was told he wasn't a hard enough rapper, that he invented this alter ego, the Fresh Prince. And on that next album, he even came up with a song, You Saw My Blinker, Bitch. He tried to make himself a harder person than he really is. This is another example of him doing that, trying to make himself harder than he really was. If that had been, and we can fill in any other name of several black comedians and even some white comedians, Will Smith would have still been sitting in his chair, laughing at that joke, trying to console his wife, which is what he should have done.
Yeah, something definitely happened between what we saw. We saw the laughter, whether it was just complicit, that's what you should do at the Oscars, but something between what we saw and then him walking on the stage certainly happened. It could have been something that he just came to the conclusion of his mind, or perhaps there was this little, wife eye cut that sort of set him in motion. For those of y'all just joining us, welcome. We are talking about what would the fathers of Chris Rock and Will Smith, how would they counsel their sons right now if they were alive? But in lieu of their fathers not being present, I hope they have an elder figure, someone that they value and will accept counsel to talk through this crazy time in their lives. We're all making content off of it, laughing. It's bar conversation for us. But right now, Will Smith is sitting in his house saying, God dang, right? Chris Rock is sitting in his house going, God dang. And they're trying to think about how do they go forward, right? What is the next step? And so today we're just talking about that. If you're just joining us, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're in YouTube, please go ahead and like the channel, subscribe if you have interest in additional future father conversations. But more importantly, in the boxes, feel free to add any questions that you all might have. Let's shift. Let's shift. Now, Will is 53 years old, right? Your dad is still alive. I'm 54. My dad is still alive. Granddaddy in the house. I could have had a moment of, who knows, emotional blackout and went up and slapped the hell out of someone on the stage. And all of a sudden, my dad is calling me, right? Lonzo, son, right? What is he saying to me, right? Let's go with B, D Chap, and then we'll go to Elton.
Yeah, I do the same thing you just said. Call him and say, Will, what is wrong? What's going on? You know, I'd ask him those exact same questions. You know, what happened? What's going through your mind? How are you feeling right now? How's your family? How are the kids? How are your kids handling this? How's your wife handling this? You know, give me the lowdown. You know,
Yeah.
Basically, want him to tell me his feelings before I give him my opinion.
Yeah, let him kind of dump, or let him kind of reveal kind of where his mental space is at the time, right?
Yeah.
You know, to that point, in a previous comment, Z's talks about why we all need to work on our mental fitness, right? Smith overstepped that Rock's comedy may have been a bit lazy, right? So he's bringing up this point about mental wellness, right? So it would add no favorite opportunity if you came at your son in a hard kind of way. We don't need to hear that at that moment. You know, if your father did something, if you men out there listening, if your son did something that is controversial or causes embarrassment, or obviously there's a reaction that wasn't anticipated, it does no help for you to come in and berate your child, right? It does no help for the situation for you to escalate it and intensify, even if you think that is the case. It's at that point where we need to be counseled. We need to be loving. We need to be embracing. And one of the first things to say, hey, son, how you doing? You know, what's on your mind? I'm here for you. What do you need, right? They need to hear that support. It's like when a loved one gets in a car accident. You don't instantly go look at the car and what's going on. Your first question out your mouth is, are you okay? Right? Are you okay? It's important as fathers we realize that. B, what's your thoughts?
So I'm kind of, I guess, on the opposite end of this spectrum, because everybody's saying, well, as a father, your first reaction should be, oh, let me love my child. But what happened to your first reaction of being, let me deal with this accountability dynamic? That we all say stuff like, well, where was his friend that was supposed to pull him back in? So at what point am I, as a father, supposed to pull my son back in to let him know, wait a minute, son, I understand you might be going through something, but this is out of bounds. This is out of pocket completely. Like, I've coached my own children playing sports. I've coached my son, and when he's been in the battle and in a basketball game and decided he was going to physically fight somebody else on another team, now I could sit back and say, oh, well, he was justified. It was a dirty foul. He hit you. Or should I get in there and say, no, son, this is not the time or the place to do that. Like, you are wrong if you swing. Like, I, as a father, I think if I was Will Smith's father, yes, I would have loved to say to him, son, what's going on? But I would have had to say what's wrong too. Like, and I think what's wrong would have came out first, particularly if I was in that audience. Like, when you came back to the seat, I would have had to grab you and took you out in the hallway and be like, son, this is way out of, you just made us look straight crazy. Like, why did you do this? And try to get that conversation going. But having the conversation of saying what's wrong with you without telling you you're wrong, I couldn't sign off on that. And I like Brother Z's question, does this incident impact us as Black men? Yes, because it forces us to deal with this conversation, which we just generally don't deal with, about what challenges to our manhood are we willing to fight and die for? Because we all know in a different circumstance, when you stand up for your woman, you might be the victim of a bullet. And so that's, again, Will Smith. When I'm at the Oscar, he probably had Charlie Mack sitting somewhere nearby, so he wasn't worried about Chris Rock. he knew that some people were going to break that fight up, and Chris Rock, there was a 99% chance didn't have a gun or any other weapon on him. So I can slap him with little consequences besides, people might not like me. I doubt if they're going to take my Oscar. All these kind of things that are going through his head. So I think this impact does affect us as black men, because now we got to wrestle with this. You've got millions of black men now going to stand up and slap somebody or not slap somebody and be judged for it. Like, people are looking at us trying to say, what's wrong with y'all? Because the people who didn't like Will Smith slapping him are looking at all black men like that's another reason we don't invite y'all to nothing. And the people who are against him slapping him, they got a view about black men too. So this is a good dialogue. We spent a week, like you said, discussing this, and I don't think we spent a week talking about black men like this since George Floyd got killed.
Interesting. Elgin, thoughts? Elgin, I think you're muted. Elgin, go ahead and say something. I think you're muted, Elgin. So as you figure that out, so B, you said that you would actually kind of check him on the behavior versus the embrace first, because to me the order would be embrace and then dissect it.
Yeah, I'm a check first kind of guy, and maybe that's been my problem as I have raised my children, that I am always the check you first, because if I don't check you, there's societal mechanisms in place that will. And I think it's important for us to say when our males are wrong in particular. Like, I've seen too many places where parents have let even the adult male child say something and do something knowing they were wrong under the guise of, well, I'll talk to you about that later. But there have been plenty of times when there has been no later to it be able to have that conversation. So I think that's very much important, because you got to let folks know that, hey, I didn't raise this guy this way. You are out of bounds of what we expect of you. So this isn't a family thing. What part of Hollywood or your relationship with this woman drove you into this space that made you react that way? So I'm a check you first kind of guy. But you know me, AJ, well enough to know I get stories that support that.
Yeah, but to your point, right? If you have check minus consoling, right, then that's problematic. If you have consoling minus check, then that's also problematic. So I'm talking about a sequencing that I think should be care first and then address the concern. As E, are you able to E, is your microphone working? Still not hearing you, brother.
But AJ, here's the problem. The only way that I can check you and have you understand it is if you know that I love you. Right. My check can come first, because my son knows I love him.
Assuming demonstrations of love preceded it, right?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. If we had that relationship, if I've been in your life, you know who I am all this point in time, I can check you because you understand. The only reason I'm checking you is because I love you too much to let you just keep going down this path and making these same mistakes. So I think that some people, when given the option, friend or father, choose friend instead of father.
No, I feel you on that. Whatever the sequence is, at some point the dad would have to say, hey son, that was perhaps not the move that I thought was consistent with your character. Hopefully the dad would have had conversations decades ago from watching the family nuance, particularly how his son was responding or feeling, and hopefully there had been some preceding conversations after the table talk or decisions being made, or when Will maybe expressed frustrations in the relationship and how his standing in the relationship. So hopefully there was some pre-conversation. But in that immediate moment, when we look at our sons acting out of character or exploring or engaging in different kind of ways that certainly aren't consistent with who we believe them to be, at some point you got to have that candid conversation about what's going on, and then more importantly, what is it that we need to do, right? And then that's when fathers have to use the power of their influence, regardless of age, to have a candid conversation about, hey, son, what is it that you need? And then to be sort of laser focused on providing that need. You know, I think coming out of this, Will probably have some counsel. Hopefully he won't announce it publicly, just kind of at this point get a little quiet and you know, fall off the scene and just try to recoup, recover, and rebrand yourself if that's a goal. So first thing to do is to address what sparked that, what caused that. And I don't think it was a moment of manhood being challenged or reputation of his wife being challenged. I absolutely believe it was an immediate culmination in already a high emotional time. He was up for an Oscar. He was very much the center of that activity. You know, had certain kind of feelings walking into that, and then it got triggered in a chaotic kind of way. So what is the underlying root of that? And to Z's point earlier, perhaps there's some therapy that needs to go into that. But kind of going forward, what does he need to do to come out of this as unscathed as possible? Can he recover from this? Do y'all think he can recover from this?
Yeah, I think most people from Hollywood can recover from this. Lots of people in Hollywood have made bad mistakes. People in the limelight have made mistakes and they've come out. Well, look at Tiger Woods. I mean, he's come out spectacularly from his shortfalls in his past. So yeah, Will Smith can come out, but I don't think it's so much about him coming out of this. I think it's more about the mental fitness. Like we were talking about his mental fitness and how he can emotionally control himself in the future and become a better man that way. If his family, if his kids, if his sons can see how he dealt with this and how he worked to better himself, I think that would be a better example of him being a father, and for the Black community, rather than just say, oh, I made it through it, I'm good. I'm in Hollywood, I'm still getting another Oscar nominated, nothing went wrong, I'm good. But if he can show his personal mental fitness, that would be better, I think.
Yeah,
Well said.
I agree. I think it depends on, does Will want to deal with the symptom or does he want to deal with the illness? Symptom is he slapped. The illness is he got some deeper stuff that he needs to work through around his relationships with his family, his wife in particular, and with his upbringing, if we go all the way back to what he witnessed as a child and those kind of things. But I think he's really got some demons that he's got to try to work through that are bigger than the slap that he displayed. Now, the other component of that is, can he get beyond this with whom? White Hollywood or the Black community?
Right.
We're a little tougher than white Hollywood. Like, he got people that's gonna handle his reputation in white Hollywood.
Right.
I don't know what he can do with the brothers in the barbershop and on the corners and those kinds of, like, it seems to me that there's a bunch of sisters who are riding for him, which I'm baffled by in this age of I don't need a man, I'm independent, blah blah blah. But that's a whole nother show, I think.
Yeah, that's another show. That's not J4 Conversation Lane. We're not
But I
going to
think
get into
there's a
that.
lot of brothers that are on that. I wish he would have slapped me, and we'd be, doing something different. So I think that's, like, a lot of brothers I talk to believe that was from everything from a punk move to inappropriate. The more civilized of my friends are, oh, that was just totally inappropriate. He should have had better skills. And then my real, homie friends are like, man, I'd have punched this dude right in his mouth and talked about his wife. If I was a comedian, I would have, there's things that I could have done that would have regained my dominance on that stage that would have made him look even stupider. So, it's interesting.
Yeah, interesting is the statement. It's a great point that both you and Dean make about, preserving, is it reputation or self that ought to be the priority, right? I think all of us at some point have, concern about reputation, but at some point you just kind of hit a state where you got to put all that on the back burner or mobilize your PR team to handle that. But first things first, right? What is his particular mental disposition? So I would echo that. You make a great point, B, about reputation of who, white America or Hollywood America or Black America, because if any of the last week comedy shows are an indication, he's going to get dragged, man. He's going to get raked, in part because there's a comedian code, and a part of that comedy code is free speech is at the pillar of that. And I understand there's a line, but short of offensive kinds of jokes, that I have a right to say that. In fact, it is part and parcel what comedy is to take on controversial subject matter, is to sort of twist the frivolous and to make it kind of something nuanced and critical. The comedian plays a particular role. I think Dave Chappelle has probably set that on his head here over the past couple of years, where the comedian is as perhaps much of a cultural influencer as anyone else, right? People are going for entertainment, but they're getting messages, they're getting new ways of looking at content. The comedian's role is perhaps more prominent than it's ever played. I'd be interested in your thoughts. And so even a benign comment, even though that's not political or ultra revealing, it's protected. It's protected, and comedians are going to get on that mic and they're going to drag Will Smith to the point of no return. And my thoughts there, although Hollywood is an interesting creature. Thoughts? Any other responses related to that before we shift a little bit? I think we lost Elgin.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up Dave Chappelle. Boy, you better be glad it wasn't Dave Chappelle up there on stage, because there's no boundaries with that in Dave Chappelle shows. And I think Will Smith and other actors and people going to comedy shows, they all recognize that. They all embrace it. They respect it. And I think Will Smith actually would too. I think it's just, like you say, a lot deeper. It was not the joke. I think it was a lot deeper what he was going through and his emotions with his family. A lot of things we probably don't even know that he's going through with his wife that caused that action. So we just don't know. Maybe it'll come out, maybe it won't. But hopefully how he handles it, like we said again, we'll be able to see a real man come to the stage and deal with it properly.
Yeah. Will Smith took a joke that would have died because most people thought it wasn't the funniest joke in the world. Had he just stayed in his seat,
right,
that joke would have made one news cycle and been done. His wife would have been embarrassed for that pretty little bit of time at the Oscars and moved on. Now, this joke is going to live on, and she's going to be embarrassed because all these, like you say, the black comedians are dragging her and Will. And she's got more jokes now than she ever would have had. And now I think they're going to make it worse because from what I read yesterday, they plan on doing a red table talk about this incident.
No.
Yeah.
Where's the petition for no red table talk? We shouldn't see no red table. We shouldn't see no Wills, no Smiths, no nothing. Y'all go hide, go be quiet. See, that's what you need a father, D.
Yep.
You need the. He's 53. Let's say you had him when he's 20. You need the 75-year-old dad to say, "Set y'all's ass in the house." Right. Jada's mother's there. Someone needs to tell them to go sit down.
Yep.
Wow. I want to deal with this question that Aziz talks about. Does the incident impact us as black men? So if you had a non-black person that was caught up in this dynamic, let's say a white comedian, do white people, they might have an opinion on the incident, but do they attach identity to it the way the black community is?
Definitely not.
No.
And why is that?
White people get to be individuals. That's the whole thing. They have mastered the art of denying any connection to yourself, which is why we had all this issue about diversity and all this, because they don't want to be German American, they don't want to be Italian, they just want to be white. And when you just get to be white, you don't have to be associated with other white people because it's so vast. Mm-hmm. And so they don't feel connected to that. They have a built-in excuse mechanism. I think they got a PR mechanism that is global. And as soon as the one white person steps out of character, the first thing they step up and say is mental illness. That person is mentally ill. They're not one of us. They're mentally ill. And then they go do the deep dive in their background. See, when he was 6, he had a problem with his mother and his father, and they came from a certain home, and it's an individual behavior. But when it comes to us, that was just another example of a rapper hitting a black comedian. That's why we shouldn't have. And the black guy was in charge of the Oscars. We had too much blackness going on. It's those black people, they're problematic when we give them these platforms. So no, they don't have the same problem we have.
So let's bring this into a father context. So for those of y'all listening in, thank you so much. Please head over to YouTube, check out some content. Please like it. It helps us gain awareness. Share it outwardly if you think this has value to the community. And then also please subscribe. We're definitely looking to grow J4 Conversations on YouTube. To put this in a father context, a lot of times we feel imperative as black fathers to raise our sons and daughters with some connection and nuance to blackness. But this is the reason, right? In part, does this incident that none of us were invited to, none of us probably were even watching, we saw this incident out in obscurity, all of a sudden has some impact upon black male identity or black cultural identity. And so it underscores that we need to teach our sons the dynamic of culture, because even unsolicited, unasked, they can be perceived or the beneficiaries of some kind of emotion or energy, good, bad, or indifferent, right? There is an element of individuality to Americanness, to whiteness, but because of black people's cultural experience in the United States, we have a certain kind of cultural glue, a certain kind of cultural community that I believe comes out of having to navigate historical and generational threat. If you were literally vulnerable to threat in your community, in your travels, I'm talking about literal threat, lynching, attack, mob attack, being disrespected, belittled. If you had to experience that literally from emancipation up into post-civil rights, you have a way of navigating through spaces that requires a communal mindset to help you navigate safety and threat. And out of that comes a cultural glue or a community that positively and problematically moves even into today. You know, I always like to jokingly say, why do all black people seem to know each other, right? You get off the airplane, you go into the corridor there and your head nodding at people, right? What does that come from? I believe it comes from a cultural communal glue that's an outcome of threat that's been imposed upon us for generations. And because unsolicitedly we could be vulnerable to that, that's why it's important that we have conversations about culture and blackness with our children. The same way we're feeling a certain kind of energy around the incident because you have sort of black on black Hollywood crime that occurs in front of us, it's important that we not just categorize it as Hollywood antics, because there's senses of perception and ownership in the immediate moment across the cultural community. Maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe that'll go away at some point. But to me, it underscores the importance of black fathers raising black children with a sense of cultural continuity and ownership. My thoughts. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's very important for us as black fathers to keep our black culture in our kids, especially our males. You know, my father tried to do it, my mother tried to do it. Growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood, it was very important to them for me to learn how they grew up, you know, that it wasn't like how I was growing up. And that, you know, my forefathers, my grandmother, my great-grandmother didn't have the things that I had. And so my father was teaching me, you know, this is where that culture comes from. And you need to pass it on to your kids. I think it's extremely important nowadays because of the segregation that we're seeing in white America. I think it's worse off now than it was with me growing up, you know, in the 70s and the 80s, as far as division of classes and division of culture. So I think it's very important for our kids nowadays to really understand, well, why are we fighting for this black person and that black person? Very easy to let our kids just, not recognize it, not go out there and march, not go out there and support our Black leaders in movements during Martin Luther King Day. It's very easy for us to just say, oh, it's okay. Well, you'll learn about it in school. That's
Right.
not good enough. That's not good enough. We need to show them and get their butt up, get them out of bed, have them march, have them understand what we fought for.
Because even though I think we have an outcome, to your point, D, about a cultural responsiveness and a sense of joy, pride, and embarrassment based upon what's going on, I believe we also have a sense that we're being evaluated by other groups collectively, and that we're not given the permission of individual success and or failure, that oftentimes that becomes a collective indictment upon the community. B, I'm gonna give you last thoughts, and then I got one final closing conversation on that.
Yeah, I would just say that, it binds the Black community because we are often judged on our trauma. If you relate and connect to our experience of trauma, the Blacker you are. It seems like the more you are connected to that and our experiences as being traumatized, then the more we embrace you. And those who are in the Black community who deny those traumas and try to remove themselves from those historical traumas, then we tell them they're Uncle Toms and these other names that we have for them. And so I think our white counterparts look at that, and they look at the trauma that we have endured, but also the traumas that we inflict. And then they deal with that as if it is a collective piece of trauma, even though, it might be, like I said, I typed it in the chat between us. We had one incident of one Black man slapping somebody on stage, and now the world wants all Black men to go get counseling, and as if we all been running around slapping people.
Right, right.
One incident, so yeah.
No, excellent point, D. Beautiful family. I have one last question that I'm going to share with the men here, but this is a time now for you all to offer any kind of questions all that you all might have. Again, thank you so much for being here and for participating. Again, check out J4 Conversations on YouTube. Like, comment, share, subscribe. We truly appreciate that. For my last question, and I'll go to Darren and then B. Clearly, Will Smith, we believe, and we're not psychologists, and as Elgin talked about, this is a bit of Monday quarterbacking, right? To me, that was a outward manifestation of some inner frustration. Have you all ever experienced frustration, either as parenting or marriage space, or it could be work, professional, whatever the case is? And were you able to acknowledge that? And how did you not just let it fester? What strategies would you use or would you recommend to release early, right? Because if you could make it a measurable thing, right? He probably was at a 95 just tension-wise, and one other added incident caused the explosion. How can we not get to 95% frustration if we diffuse and deflate early on? What are your strategies that you all employ to kind of de-escalate or to minimize or to address frustration well before it gets to possibly a level of explosion?
That's a great question. And I think it's one of the biggest challenges men have in life is communication. Unfortunately, some of us men hold our aggression in, and then, like Will, it just exploded. So how we deal with that so we don't get to that 95% is to have an outlet, have like a mentor, have one of your boys you can talk to, and just vent, just let it go. Get some advice from them, or just have a partner to just listen to you. I know for me, sometimes in a marriage, you're bent up and you're angry. But once you do let it go and you address the situation, or you address what's going on in your mind and your heart to your wife, you may not want to do it because it's not your personality, but you do feel a lot better, and it does release that 50% of anger, so you're not going to explode. So my biggest thing would be find an outlet to release through word, through conversation, your feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. Z's talks about putting people through a boot camp to help strengthen their mental fitness, or to what many college campuses are doing is to name it, to invite people to almost overeducate around mental health to change the taboo. Although I think we're doing a great job in education, I still think there's perhaps a pause among humans, and maybe that's nuanced by culture to the extent by which they engage formal mental health counseling. And there's other replacements, the barbershop that we talked about. I think that's important. I think the barbershop talk is very important, but I would agree that the education says, hey, for our own mental stability or just to talk and vent, perhaps consider someone in a more professional certified space. B.
Yeah, I think D was head on when he said it's about communication. And fortunately for me, that's my discipline. So in the discipline of communication, we understand context and we look at the context in which things occur. Will Smith has a context that I don't have, and it's the lack of that context which keeps me from having the type of outburst that Will had. And what do I mean by that? Will Smith has what we call FU money.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Smith had FU money. Maybe at the point where I was having one of those kind of breakdowns, I could care less because my wealth will overcome any obstacle that somebody puts or any objection to my outburst. So the context of me not having that kind of money is always in the back of my head. Like, me losing a corporate client has different ramifications than Will losing a movie deal.
Right.
He's making $20 million a movie for all these years he's been making it. I've been making 20 cents. This has ramifications. So I know how to, and that I have to control myself. And I have been raised, and I don't, it's that Emmett Till mentality. It's that visual image that if you step across a certain line as a Black man in the United States of America, there is no coming back for you. And so I always have to use that mentality when I'm making these decisions and I'm navigating. So yeah, I experience frustration just like everyone else. There are times when I want to boil over and blow up and slap somebody. But the context keeps me from doing it because I understand that I got to be around for the next day. It's what we talk about when we say, let's have the talk. What's the goal for your son in the interaction with the police? To get home and live another day, to fight another day. And so that's my context that guides most of my actions. And when I lose that ability to maintain myself in there, you'll know I've been making $20 million because I will have FU kind of money and I will be willing to do that. So until then, I'm good.
B, that's so well said. That's so well said. Context. We're using a Hollywood economic entertainer incident to try to extrapolate sort of localized father lessons, right? And so there is a bit of apples and oranges. Great point. I would just say this in closing: it's important that we listen to our instinct. A lot of times there might be some embarrassment in our frustration because we feel perhaps our fatherhood or manhood is being threatened, that we're being disrespected, and we don't want to say the words, right? That would be to acknowledge it. But I think in any situation where you're dealing with two sentient beings, whether you married them or created them, they are of their own world and have ways of being and things that they make in varying levels of maturity. So there might be times where things just don't go the way you want them to go, or might be misperceived, misconstrued, and you feel some kind of way about it. I think a part of fathering and husbanding is to articulate, to confess, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now, right? This is how I'm interpreting the situation. And for one, hopefully clarification comes out of that, but also correction comes out of that. There's accountability that we would need to take, but if we're heard and we articulate our frustration, hopefully some change comes out of that. But if we develop a strategy of trusting our instinct, what'd you just say? What the hell was that, right? Rather than eating that, at some point we got to say, let a little time pass. Something happened today. This is how I interpreted it. Is that what you meant, or is there something else, right? And if we can be heard, it can be corrected, it can be redressed. We can learn perhaps what our accountability is to it. But more importantly, we don't eat that, and just complexly frustrated. And then we all of a sudden butt berserk on TV, right? So trust your instinct, articulate it, seek input, seek correction. That's the last thing I want to share. Z's closes us out with, appreciate you, brothers. Very well done. Keep it real. Thank you so much. Beautiful folks listening in. Thank you. Truly, truly appreciate your presence. Head on over there to J4 Conversations on YouTube. Check it out. If you like the content, please share it outwardly. Like, comment, and subscribe. D, anything last? Any last comments?
Just want to say appreciate you. Thank you, B, for your insight. Thank you, AJ, for having me once again.
Love, love, love. B, any last thoughts?
Same thing. Thank you for everything and appreciate having the space for this conversation. It's really important. So appreciate you. Nice meeting you, D. Look forward to talking with you again.
All right. On behalf of J4 Conversation, that's a wrap. We'll see you next Sunday. Thank you guys so much. We're out.